basically saved your wrestling media career. So how does that happen?
I am the Solid Monster, and you're watching Tom Talks Rubbish right here on YouTube. And hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this one.
I have the most basic name in the world.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and stand back with another interview. This time, I'm joined by Jameus Monney from bodyslam.net. So welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this whole discussion.
Shall we pull the curtain back and say, like, the reason we probably will have a better rapport than some of my guests is, for those of you that don't know, obviously we both work for Bodyslam, don't we?
Yes, sir.
And you have been gracious enough to step in for a couple of bodyslam.net WrestleWatch podcast episodes. So,
yes, sir. Anytime y'all need me on a podcast, that's part of the reason I'm here. I do a lot of odds and ends stuff throughout Body Slam, and one of them is just filling it where I need to be.
Yeah. So, but if we take this back to the beginning, my friend, where do you first discover wrestling?
Discover wrestling. You're familiar with Rob Wilkins. I told him this story, more of a gist. I'll go into a little bit more detail. When he had me on Fightful Select recently for a retro review with Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect.
Ooh.
It was that match, 10 years after the match. So, my dad's a big wrestling fan. I had watched it here and there, especially since my dad really struggled finding things to do with me that a traditional father and son would do together, because with my disabilities, I really don't want to go into all of that publicly.
That's fine.
With me struggling to walk the first couple of years of my life, with me having the mental deficiencies I did at a young age, there really wasn't much traditionally you could do to bond with me, and he really struggled. So we kind of watched television, and we were living in Tampa at the time. So there was this Tampa has these weird, a lot of older Tampa houses have these weird, like, not balconies, but they're built into the side of the house. They're not an extra room, but they're an extra room.
I know what you mean, because England does have that sort of thing where it's like, it's not like a traditional balcony because it's not like huge and you couldn't have like a seat.
But it's indoors and it's connected to the flat.
Oh, it's like a conservatory sort of thing.
You could say that. I'll think of what it's called later, and I'll kick myself
both
for not knowing.
And we'll DM each other like, "Oh, it's called this," innit?
But so he had his own little room, and I'd watch the Braves, and this was 2005. So McCann had just come up. Andrew was hitting 50 out, whatever. The big during that time. The Braves on TBS during that time were a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Not as big of a deal as they were in the 90s with that. Just they were a big deal. We'd watch Seinfeld, whatever, wrestling, but I wasn't interested in a lot of it now, which is funny considering I cover baseball and pro wrestling as a career now. And then it was a tape of Mr. Perfect versus Bret Hart at SummerSlam, because he had all of these really old tapes that made me sit and appreciate it, and then I watched the rest of the show. That show is a one-match show. That is really the only match on the card that's really a really good wrestling match. But that show also is a spectacle show. So I don't care for Hulk Hogan. I hate the Ultimate Warrior now. But in that match with Slaughter and his whole crew is not good. But it's the idea of the larger-than-life character when you're 5, that there was a mix of everything, and that's what those shows did really well back then. And that show drew me in, but it was specifically the Bret Perfect match that made me want to watch. if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And then from there, he had actually pulled out a whole bunch of wrestling figures that, because he was hoping I'd get into them, so he had been collecting them for years.
Ooh.
And then from there, I would pull out Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn was one of my first favorite wrestlers as a kid. I was a big Billy Gunn fan as a kid. I would pull out Billy Gunn and he put in the tape and show me some Billy Gunn stuff. Then I'd do the same with whoever was next, Chris Jericho, And that was a really fun day. I have really fond memories of that day. That's one of the earliest fond memories of my childhood for me.
You talked about there being very into the wrestling side of wrestling, which sounds really stupid to say, but really at a young age, you know what I'm trying to say, don't you? So
I do. I was a bigger Matt Hardy fan as a kid than I was a Jeff Hardy fan.
Yeah,
because Matt's a better worker, and for me, I really appreciate a guy like Rey Mysterio now, especially his in-ring work. But it wasn't that style that got me into it. My favorite, I did like high flying because I was a big Paul London and Brian Kendrick fan. But I was Finley, Benoit, those physical guys I really gravitated towards in 2006 as to what was going on in the product at the time. Finley, I was a huge Finley fan. I was a really big Benoit fan until the incident happened.
Yeah, no.
A year and a half later.
Yeah.
So it was the physical aspect for me that really did pull me in.
So what I am curious to know with with you being so into the wrestling side of wrestling, even at a young age, do you think if you discovered today's wrestling at that young age, the way wrestling is now, do you think you'd be as into it?
No.
Okay.
Because, and I much prefer modern wrestling now. If you had asked me 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. I love what a company like AEW brings to the table. I think Kenny Omega is a tremendous worker in the way he layers his stories over time. But the difference between a Kenny Omega and a Kurt Angle, who was big in 2006. And I'm a huge Kurt Angle fan. Like, Kurt Angle is one of my top 10 favorites of all time. So we'll use Kurt Angle for this example. Kurt Angle was kind of similar. I shouldn't say that because I know what I'm about to say. And Angle would sit on Eddie's other ankle, so he couldn't kick it, do the shoe trick at SummerSlam. So maybe Kurt Angle is a bad example. But if you watch a Kenny Omega match with Kazuchika Okada, G1 2017, the big Tokyo Dome match, that all-time great matchup. I love breaking it down. I've broken it down on podcasts before. They get so much out of so little. Like, Kazuchika Okada gets the roof of the Tokyo Dome to explode for a simple drop kick. And that's on both competitors for building up the basics and the fundamentals of their work. But if you watch that match, there's callbacks from other matches. And a lot of the Adam Page match last year at Full Gear, where Page finally won the title, was this big culmination for Page. It's an outstanding match. My issue with that match is I was in attendance for the first Full Gear match, the Eliminator tournament match, the year before. There's so many callbacks to that match that if you don't catch it, you're going to miss. If you didn't see the match, you're going to miss part of the story. And while I love the layered stories as a fan, I don't think that's conducive to becoming a fan because you can't fully appreciate what they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
and this is a problem across the board. I just picked a random wrestler who I consider to be one of the best in the world.
I'll put it this way. Because you're in now, it's very sort of easy to stay in. But if you were trying to get in nowadays, you'd be a bit like, I don't know what's going on. I also feel
I love the work rate, but I feel the storytelling nowadays isn't nearly as good. You get every character on Raw talks exactly the same. Yeah. Drew McIntyre should not sound like Bobby Lashley. And their cadence, their tone, that's kind of changing with Triple H. The lack of attention to detail. They don't award new fans for picking up on nuance. In fact, they don't even try to placate those fans.
No.
And for me, the stories as well is part of what ropes you in. And one of the major companies, AEW does it really good in some aspects, doesn't do it well in other aspects, tag and women. But WWE completely has neglected that for 10 years. So if the storytelling and the spectacle of it, it's not there anymore. And that's part of it's the hybrid, the variety that brought me in the first place.
Yeah, totally. What about if we switch the question and I ask you, what if you discovered, say, the type of wrestling that you first discovered in the era that it was appropriate, but you had no prior wrestling knowledge? Do you think you'd have got into it?
I would have been a huge wrestling fan in the 80s. A lot of because I like 80s wrestling, but a lot of the matches just bore me.
It's interesting because you're not a Hogan guy. I found that quite interesting.
Actually, I used to be a Hogan guy. A lot of the reason I'm not a Hogan guy is because I can't stand the guy.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough, I suppose.
I'm not a Warrior guy even before you consider him being Jim Hellwig.
Yeah.
But it depends on the era of Hogan, too. I don't like anything from 2002 forward, regardless of his personal stuff. But 1985 Hogan that's feuding with Don Morocco, there's some really good stuff there.
Yeah.
And what I find funny about Hulk Hogan is a lot of the gripes about modern wrestling that people who love Hogan have is Hogan to a T.
Yeah.
He doesn't sell. There's a match at Mania 5 where he's working Randy Savage. Randy Savage hits probably the best elbow drop Randy Savage ever hit. Because Randy Savage was very inconsistent on his elbow drops. And he hit a really nice one on Brett at Survivor Series, I want to say 89. Survivor Series 90.
Yeah.
But he would miss a lot. He would overshoot. He would land on his feet. The most damning indictment of that is George Steele at WrestleMania 2. But he hits the best elbow drop Randy Savage ever hits, and Hogan kicks out at one.
I saw that.
And then just goes right into the finish. Like, it doesn't work for me now.
I think my thing with Hogan is, and especially that match, if you look, you see like two different styles of wrestling, because the first half is a Savage match, and then the second half is
Hogan worked really well to his opponent's strengths. That is one thing Hogan did really well. I feel like we're really hitting on specific stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you want to broaden the conversation a bit, that would be.
Yeah. So if we move on into your wrestling fandom and career, have you had like a, how do I explain this? A drop-off period where you're like, wrestling doesn't interest me?
I really haven't, because I've not had a good life. I have a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And for me, my escape from that, especially at 4 a.m., is wrestling. Now, sometimes I'll get tired of specific wrestling. Like, I go through phases. Right now, I'm in a really fun 90s Japan phase.
Ooh.
Manami Toyota, AJW, or stuff like that. Bull Nakano, or Kenta Kobashi, and All Japan, and then early 2000s Pro Wrestling Noah. But I know in 3 months I'm going to stop watching that, probably start watching it again like a year and a half later, stop watching it again, because I've done that with everything. I've done that with 80s wrestling. I recently went through a phase earlier this year where I was watching old Memphis wrestling from the 70s. Like, why would I do that? Wrestling from the Chase, St. Louis, back in the 60s, 70s. I've gone through that phase. I go through some really weird wrestling phases, like Ring of Honor 2003 specific, stuff like that, where I'll just watch certain products, old products, for 2 months, and then I'll go to something else.
Okay. But what current wrestling are you currently watching? Like, what do you have to watch?
I recently did I have to watch everything for my job, I feel.
Yeah.
Everything WWE, everything AEW. I watch. I'm on Impact's internal media list now, so I'm making more of a concerted effort to watch Impact, which is actually really underrated. And I recently, as we're recording this, last night I did the second show of my new bi-weekly independent wrestling show for a non-Body Slam platform, and it did 1.1K on just Twitch stream.
What platform is it, out of curiosity?
TWM. Okay. I'm not too familiar with them, but the people I'm hosting with wanted me, and they're great. So shout out to them. Ash and Tiffany, they do great work. But the show's doing numbers, so I'm gonna have to keep diving into the indies more. And I love the indies. I covered the indies at a previous site as the only wrestling I covered in a 5-year window because of a really poor previous experience at a wrestling publication. The only reason I'm in wrestling media right now is because of Cast. Because I was full blown into sports, and I was covering baseball, football, hockey.
You brought up still covering baseball there. So how did you get into covering baseball?
So I got into covering all 4: baseball, football, hockey, and wrestling at the same time when a guy named Martin, who Body Slam contributors Corey, Trent, and Rami will be familiar with if you break up his name.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the best thing in the world, but he's a nice guy. And he's like, hey, I was 14 at the time. He's like, hey, there's an opening at this site. And I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I just wanted to placate him. And I hadn't really found anything I was good at. I know with my disabilities, wrestling wasn't the right avenue for me.
Yeah.
Nor was sports, even though I was actually a pretty decent soccer player in my day. After all my surgeries, of course. And so I was like, sure, why not? My first article was on John Smoltz the day he went into the Hall of Fame. So last month marks 7 years as we're recording this in sports media. And from there, I ended up jumping around a lot before I got to Body Slam, but I spent the first year or so there before going to No DQ, which I don't have nice words for.
Fair enough.
But and then I went elsewhere. That's actually where I met Rami, was elsewhere, and now I was his personal editor there, and now he's doing really good work for Body Slam. So,
he's the MMA dude, right?
MMA and pro wrestling, but he's brought primarily in for MMA. When Cass, I bring in a lot of our team members now, and it's I was his personal editor, so I know I'm gonna get quality, and so I'm like, sure, I'll reach out to people I've worked at a number of different sites, so I'm well connected with some of the more under the radar people that I know will produce good content, and so why not stick with people you know are going to deliver before you broaden your search,
Totally. So let's get into, how did you connect with Cass and join Body Slam? Because you said that he basically saved your wrestling media career. So how does that happen?
So I was at a site. It wasn't the best site, but they let me do my own thing. And I was doing by far the best quality content on the site. It was a very clickbaity site that much preferred quantity over quality, which, hey, that's their business model. It's just not for me.
Yeah, totally.
So from there, I'm like, okay, I was looking for something part-time while I stayed in school to get my degree, just so I could keep my foot in the door. And Trent Osborne, one of our contributors, who I've known for almost 10 years. I'll randomly go crash at his house sometimes. Like, when I say I've known him, like, he and I have been like this for a long time. And he's like, hey, Cass needs people. I'm like, sure, why not? I hadn't worked at a wrestling oriented site since 2016 because of a really bad experience. And I'm like, sure, worst they can do is give you another bad experience, right?
Totally, yeah.
So he sent Cass some rips I've done before, some samples of my work. And Cass looked at them, and Cass was like, "You don't need to give me a sample. Give me what you want your user password to be. You can start publishing right now." So I was never on I was never on an editor here. I didn't have to go through the whole application process. I got very lucky.
Neither did I. I was just going to say that.
I had the person, because there were people that joined around the same time as me that had to go through a really arduous process.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I didn't have to. I would have done it, but I'm lucky that I didn't have to.
Someone has asked me this question before, and I'm curious to know what you think.
So in December, I joined, and I started publishing in like November or something like that, because it was right after the Braves won the World Series, because that's how Cass and I got tight, because we're both Braves fans.
Yeah.
So I had just joined another baseball site, so I figured, but I'm working at a specific team beat now. So I figured I can do 2 very specialized things and have more time. And then that keeps my foot in the door in both avenues while I work the school stuff out. And so I don't like podcasting. I get very anxious. It takes all my energy, but I don't like the way my voice sounds. I'm very insecure about my face, a lot of stuff. But it's something I need to do if I need to get into sports media. It's a place I need to get comfortable. And in December, I was in the mountains, and I'm like, oh, Cass lives over here. So Cass and I went to lunch, and he basically sat me down and said, hey, this is what you do, and this is what you're going to need to do. This is how you can get over it. These are ways you can help. And from there, I've been doing podcasting. I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
A lot better than I ever thought I would. And for him, I wouldn't be doing that if it weren't for him, because he basically told me, get the hell over yourself. And he told me what I needed to hear. And for that, I still have all of these issues, but I'm slowly getting more comfortable. Like, I've had people that have done multiple shows with me go, every time they go, you're getting more comfortable, and you're getting looser, which is what I need to do. So if it weren't for Cass, I've had a lot of opportunities this past year. I have a lot more opportunities that are coming up that I can't announce yet, that I wouldn't have been comfortable doing if it weren't for Cassidy. And for that, I want to give my boy a shout.
I agree. Like, since I joined Body Slam in what? When did WrestleWatch start? You'll know this because I
have no idea. I should know because I help run our podcasting section, but I don't know. I know the episode you and I just did was episode 13 or something like that.
12, I think. This is episode 13 that we're recording this week at time of recording.
Okay.
Because that's why we're doing bad matches, because like unlucky 13, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I got you.
Anyway, that's not going to mean anything by the time this airs. But like, I feel, do you think because Cass discovered you through your work is the reason that you didn't have to go through the application process? Because I've had people ask me that question before.
I think a lot of it is I had somebody he trusted vouch for me.
Yeah.
And I think I was going over this with somebody else because I was not good when I left my first site. I was better than I was when I started, but I wasn't good. Those were the only people who ever sat with me and critiqued my work. And then I became an editor at my very next site after my first 2 sites, which the second site I was only there for a couple of weeks, so it's not like it really counts.
Yeah.
And then from there, I've been editor at 4 different places and self-publish at the other. So it's one of those, I've not really had much. And the other side I'm at now, I have an editor, but they just post my stuff because they know it's going to be good. So they don't critique me. They don't make edits. So I've not gone through an editor process in 6 of my 7 years. So for me, I struggle because I know my work is good, but I want it to be better. So I want those outside voices, and I don't get that. So for me, I've had to take myself out of the mindset of, when you write something, you're going to think it's good because you wrote it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what the voice in your head sounds good to you, of course, it's going to sound good when you read it on paper. That outside perspective is what really tells you whether it's good or not. So for me, I've had the struggle is finding those outside voices and weaving those into your work. So for me, I've had a lot of trials with my writing where I purposely go against what I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
So I can be a more complete writer. I read as much as possible from proven authors and from people online, just so I can like get an understanding of different styles of writing, learn what works, what doesn't work. So I've had to put myself through my own processes that I put writers through when they first start, just so I can get better. Because I'm of the belief you can always get better. So for me, I know my work's going to speak for itself because nobody's harder on my work than I am. And nobody goes out of their way to try and improve their work as much as I do. At least to me, of course, I'm going to think that because, of course, I'm going to think, oh, I know how hard I work. But I really don't know how much anybody else works, how hard anybody else works. So please don't blanket that statement.
I know what you mean, though, man.
But my 7 years of that, your writing's going to get really strong just because it has to over time. So I think my work when I applied really spoke for itself too. Of course, I don't know how much of it he read, so I could just be speaking out my ass here.
No, the reason I ask is because obviously I started doing Wrestle Watch after I interviewed Cass. So I'm curious to know from other people that maybe didn't go through the application process because I didn't, like if him discovering your work maybe made it easier than going through an application process itself, because I know that I would personally struggle.
Right. Application processes aren't too difficult with sites, and this is just my own experience. If you have a portfolio of work, which I already have, so I'm not sure I would have made much of a difference, but it just made it easier because I didn't have to do it.
Fair enough. But now the big question, my friend. If Cass hadn't offered you a job or you hadn't connected with Cass, would you still be involved in the wrestling media?
No. I had a lot of preconceived notions on what wrestling media was due to my past in it, so I wasn't planning on coming back to it. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad I did because I've had a lot of really cool opportunities. I've met a lot of really cool people. I'm doing a lot of really cool stuff, both with Body Slam and without Body Slam. And I love the fact that I can bring people into Body Slam. I can make people at Body Slam the best content creators they can be because we have a lot of really talented people. I've really enjoyed working with Kyle, seeing him get better over time. I really enjoyed reading through and helping touch up Haley's Monarch Butterfly piece, which it'll be dated by the time this drops. But if you haven't read it, go read that because
definitely.
It's fantastic. Corey's gotten really good from where he was a couple months ago, and I'm glad I brought him in. Brady, we also, and it's a credit to our writers too, because I can sit with Brady and I can go, "This is what you're doing wrong," and Brady's going to make sure he fixes it next time out, and that's a credit to him for being willing to learn.
Yeah.
So. And we have a lot of great people here. I'm glad I've had the opportunity to work here the way I have.
Yeah. And like, even because I'll tell this story because I find it quite funny. When I first joined Body Slam, you sent me like a welcome to the team message. You told me this story recently and we got off on the wrong foot. Do you want to tell that story or should I?
So when he says we got off on the wrong foot, I didn't hold it against him. I mean, I probably did, but he would never know by the way I spoke to him after that because I don't like to
be a dick, basically.
Essentially, I'm very work out your problems in your own time and keep the work as drama-free as possible because it makes my life easier. And as an editor, I've got to do what I preach.
Yeah.
So with that, he messaged me and he's like, "Hey, Cass says you're an editor." And I'm an editor in terms of editing articles, stuff like that.
I didn't know that at the time.
I produce podcasts, but he assumed, oh, I edit the podcast, which I can do, but it's a nightmare because I had to edit the first episode of Accidentally Executed. And I got very overwhelmed. It took me 6 hours just to edit it. But let's go watch it. We got a lot of good feedback on that. But he's like, hey, can you edit my YouTube videos for my YouTube channel? And I'm like, I don't know who you are, and you're already asking me for favors and that aren't even mindset related.
I was like, that wasn't intended, but like Cass said, reach out to you just in case, because maybe you could help me or knew someone that could. But I feel
Maybe
like
build for future efforts. Maybe build a rapport first.
I feel like we patched it up quite quickly, and
no doubt about it.
doing Wrestle Watch with you has been quite fun. We both said like, if ever Cass can't do it again, I'm gonna request, can I do it with you? You said it.
That's a fun show to be on. I love breaking down wrestling matches.
Yeah,
and talking about wrestling.
Exactly. So, but as we look at wrapping this up, we're going to do a very, very quick segment that I call generic questions. Those of you you probably will know this because you've seen my videos before. But this is where I ask my guests their favorite match, favorite pay-per-view,
favorite theme song, right?
Favorite theme song, favorite tag team, and favorite superstar.
Well, I'm going to wish you good luck because I got dozen answers for all of those.
Okay. So what's your favorite match of all time, my friend?
My favorite match is Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. I assume we've already kind of gone over that, so I assume this is the expected answer.
Yeah. Favorite pay-per-view of all time?
Pay-per-view. Let's see. It's easy to say any of the AEW pay-per-views I've attended, either of the WrestleManias I've attended, stuff like that, just because I was there. So I'm going to exclude every show every pay-per-view I've attended.
Okay.
Unforgiven 2006 is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The Revolution 2020 is a lot of fun.
Were you not there for that one?
No, that was before they were in dailies.
Oh, you went
because
to
it was the last pay-per-view
shows.
before. It was the last pay-per-view before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
WrestleMania 19 is probably my favorite. I've actually got a story with that show. So every Christmas Eve, I have this weird tradition with one of my friends. He wrestles as Logan Wrights on the Tampa Independent Circuit if people want to go check out his work.
I think you've told me about
We've been friends for
before.
years.
I find this quite funny.
We'll watch it'll be 2 a.m. and we'll sync Die Hard, so we rewatch it at the same time, and then we'll text each other like it's the first time we're both watching it. Yeah. And like it's an actual real thing that's happening, like live. And then after that, we'll do it with WrestleMania 18. I don't know how WrestleMania 19 got in there, but I watch Brock versus Angle same day every year.
I love Brock versus Angle.
That's fantastic.
Because we've got 6
Kurt
minutes.
Angle might be legitimately the greatest in-ring performer of all time. And we don't have time for me to go into that rant, but
we'll do it next time. Favorite tag team of all time?
Tag team. Depends on my mood. If I'm in the mood for really good in-your-face tag team wrestling, it's got to be the Brainbusters, Tully and Arn. The Hart Foundation. You know I'm a huge Bret Hart fan. I'm wearing an Edge shirt, so we'll give a shout-out to Edge Christian here. Lundrick is in the conversation depending on my mood. There's a number of different ways for me to go with that. For current tag teams, I'm a really big fan of the Revival.
Ooh.
I've been a big FTR fan since before they were on NXT. Well, they were on NXT, but like when they were just guys in the Performance Center doing NXT Coconut Loop shows. I've been on the Revival FTR hype train since day one.
And then as we wrap this up, did we do favorite theme song? No, we haven't.
We have not. We've done favorites match.
Favorite tag team
and tag team.
Favorite theme song.
That also depends because I like a lot of music. We could do a whole 2-hour show just me talking about music. So, do we count random stuff like James Gibson not paying to use but using Country Boy Can't Survive during his Ring of Honor run, which absolutely rules, by the way, a very underrated Ring of Honor run.
Yeah.
Or Sting using Seek and Destroy by Metallica despite not having the rights to it in 1985. Or of music they licensed Slow Chemical is fantastic. I'm a big Finger Eleven fan.
I can't believe you didn't say the Sandman's theme if we're talking about licensed music.
Because Enter Sandman might be my least favorite Metallica song.
Oh, really?
I love Metallica. I have a James Hetfield guitar pick concert used sitting up right next to me. But that's a fun story too. But I'm just not a big fan of Enter Sandman.
Fair enough.
My favorite song WWE's licensed from that album is probably Sad But True. But
fair enough.
I'm a big CM Punk fan, and I'm a big Killswitch Engage fan, and I'm a big AFI fan. So I don't even know what my favorite CM Punk theme music is because Miseria Can't Tear and This Fire Burns both rule. Ooh. But if I'm wearing an Edge shirt, so we'll just say my favorite is Never Gonna Stop because I'm also a big Rob Zombie fan.
Fair enough.
My Time, Triple H is probably my favorite of their original theme songs.
And then as we wrap this up, favorite superstar of all time?
Favorite superstar of all time. Also depends. Triple H. I'm going to give a couple names here.
Mm-hmm.
Triple H. Mick Foley. Both Owen and Brett. Right now, Manami Toyota is on the list. Although she never was in WWE, so I don't know if she counts as a superstar because that's.
All right, I should say wrestler then as well.
Becky Lynch, Lita, for two other women I really can't choose from. Edge, Christian. I'm just gonna keep naming wrestlers. So let's just stop me. Kenny Omega.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I love a lot of wrestlers. If you ask Kyle of the Code of Honor podcast, my favorite wrestler of all time is Paul London. But apparently, I didn't know that. Although I'm a big Paul London fan, I didn't know that.
And then, as we look at wrapping this up, where can the good people find you and your content?
You can find me, of course, at bodyslam.net. I've got a couple shows coming up that I can't really announce yet because they're still kind of in the making. They'll probably be out by the time I'm
this ends.
I have a couple of other projects, non-Body Slam, coming up that will probably be announced by the time this airs, but I can't really announce yet. I have, of course, my Twitter at the James where I advertise all of this stuff, and you can find me every other Monday on TWM Talks Indies with Ash Nova and Queen of the Indies. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback for the show. A lot of people seem to really be gravitating towards it, so I'm really happy with how that show's turning out. Of course, you can see me talking baseball over at Fansided. I talk baseball everywhere, actually. But
fair enough. And obviously, I want to say thank you to James for coming on. If you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talk Trash. Follow bodyslam.net wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube for my show with Cassidy Haynes, the Wrestle Watch podcast. And follow the Wrestle Watch pod on Twitter to help us pick our match every week. And I will see you in the next interview. Goodbye.